Draft grades are far from a new concept on YouTube when it comes to NFL content. There's plenty of people out there who dedicate a channel to a specific team and will talk about each individual pick in depth, or they'll talk about the draft class at whole in depth. There's plenty of people out there who cover the league at large, such as myself, that will go division by division or conference by conference or talk about the draft in one big video. But you never see anybody talk about each individual team in their own draft grades video. All 32 teams, 32 videos. You never see that happen until now. Because I was disappointed with the pre draft content I was able to put out, because as a college student, free time is a luxury that I don't always have, I have decided to make up for it by making 32 videos throughout the month of May talking about my thoughts on all 32 teams' drafts. And I'm really excited to get into this. Keep in mind, as per usual with draft grades videos, I know that I am going to be wrong on most of these, primarily because we haven't seen these guys play. We don't know how they're going to be developed, all of that good stuff. This is just my analysis based upon how I graded different players leading into the draft. You know, if I think a guy was overdrafted based on my evaluations, underdrafted, et cetera, et cetera. That's what these grades are based off of. I also don't think I'm better than any NFL GM out there. I'm just a 21-year-old college kid who spends the little free time he has watching film. So bear with me. People seem to like my opinions on this kind of stuff. I like sharing it, so I'm going to continue to do so. So without further ado, let's go ahead and talk about the Cincinnati Bengals and what they did during the 2024 NFL Draft. So the Bengals class is an interesting one, and I know I have opened every single one of these videos by saying that I'm really trying to I got to get myself a thesaurus. I got to start working on some synonyms. But what makes this Bengals class so interesting is there's a lot of risk involved. And that's because of a lot of projections. You have guys like Mims, Jenkins, McKinley Jackson, Tanner McLaughlin, who are players that you have to kind of project. And then you have guys like Eric All, who have some injury history concerns. You're worried about their durability. You have a guy in Jermaine Burton. You're worried about the off the field aspect of things. And then, of course, you have some day 3 picks. But it's a very risky class, and one that I respect the Bengals for having, because this is a team that can afford to take those risks. You know, Cincinnati is in a pretty good spot with their roster. They don't have a lot of holes. They don't have a lot of major issues. Right now, they're just kind of trying to fortify for the future. You know, you've got some older players on the roster. You've got some guys like T. Higgins who you're worried about their situation with the team long term. And, you know, I'm not here to speculate whether or not guys like T. Higgins or Trey Hendrickson will be on the roster after this coming season or not. But just in case they're not, you got to start considering the future. And you have a couple older tackles too. Like there is some stuff to worry about with the future. And I thought they did a pretty good job addressing those concerns, starting, of course, with Amarius Mims, the offensive tackle out of Georgia. And Mims is a really unique prospect because on paper, you have a 6'8", 340-pound offensive tackle who is uber athletic and played some really dominant football for Georgia. On the other hand, his career snap count is very low. He dealt with some injuries his final year at Georgia, and he spent one of his 3 years on the team rotating in and out with another tackle. So this is something I was really proud of when I came up with it. You know, we talk about draft comps. My comp for Mims is a Rorschach test. And if you don't know what a Rorschach test is, essentially it's like the ink blots that you would see in therapy, where it's really nothing, but the idea is you're supposed to see something in it. It's supposed to tell you something about yourself. Right, so when you look at Amarius Mims as a talent evaluator, you're either seeing the upside, oh my god, this dude's huge, he's athletic. He wasn't on the field a lot, but when he was killing it. So we're going to make sure he's on the field a lot, and we're going to continue to hone that athleticism and that size and work on some of the more polished aspects of his game, polishing some of the more technical aspects of his game, rather. Or on the other side, you look at it as, yeah, he's big and athletic and all, but he hardly played. He's Mekhi Becton. You know, he's going to be that type of guy. So it's really a matter of where you stand when it comes to evaluators or evaluations and players. And I like to consider myself an optimist at heart, especially when it comes to guys like this. So I love Amarius Mims. I will say I don't have like an A plus, super steal, super perfect pick because I did have a tackle on the board that was better than him, or I thought was better than him in Troy Fotano. And also, this is probably about where I would have taken Mims, if not a little bit earlier. I had a late, well, yeah, a little bit earlier than I would have because I had a late first round grade on him. That being said, I see why he fits in Cincinnati. I see why the Bengals would like him because this is a team that prefers those big, strong, you know, kind of like people mover tackles to run their gap schemes. They're not one of these zone run teams that we see a lot of nowadays. So in that regard, I understand why they skipped out on Fotano, because Fotano is the complete opposite, which is one of the reasons why this isn't like, because usually if you've seen my other videos, you know, if there was a guy I was really pounding the table for, I'll knock a pick like this to like an A minus or a B plus or whatever. But really the Mims pick, it's just like, this isn't tremendous value based on my evaluations. It's good value. Like, this is a good place to pick him, but it's not like, oh my God, how did he fall to 33 or whatever, right? This is just a good pick. So in Mims, like I said, you're getting a super athletic, super big tackle that isn't quite raw. That wouldn't be the right way to put it, but he's not the most refined player in the world. And, you know, this is a bit of a risky pick. That's another reason why this isn't like an A plus home run, you know, knocked it out of the park pick. Because on one hand, like I said, you know, we go back to the Rorschach test thing. On one hand, this could be the next Penei Sewell, right? He's got that upside. But on the other hand, this could be Mekhi back then. So it's kind of a matter of, you know, the development, how quickly you're going to put him out there, and how much work you actually think he needs. I think he needs a little bit less work than some people have made him out to be, but I do still think he needs that work. I don't know if he's somebody you start day one. I certainly wouldn't try him at guard because I don't think a 6'8" guard is going to pan out too well. I've seen a lot of people, you know, say that maybe that'll be the plan. I hope it's not. If it is, if you just want to have your 5 best linemen on the field, maybe they can make it work. But realistically, I think the plan for Mims is to sit him for a year or two. I don't know how long they have Trent Brown under contract. But if this is your long-term Trent Brown replacement on the right side of the offensive line, I think that would make a ton of sense. This is your chance to get Burrow a legit bodyguard, something he has not had during his career yet. So I like the pick quite a bit. There's a little bit of risk involved, but I do like the pick quite a bit. And another pick that has some risk to it, this time because the player is a little bit more raw, is Chris Jenkins, the defensive tackle out of Michigan. Obviously the son of former, I believe, All-Pro. Yeah, former All-Pro nose tackle Chris Jenkins Sr. He's fun. He's a really fun player. The thing with Jenkins is he has all of the run stuffing ability, right? He's really instinctive as a run defender, great at reading gaps, great at, you know, being able to recognize blocking schemes, being able to get that first step into the backfield and things of that nature. He's really good in that regard. But as a pass rusher, he's a total projection. You know, at Michigan, he wasn't really rushing the passer all that much. He was more of a run defender. He was on the field as a primary run defender. And that's okay. You know, you're hopeful that you can get those pass rushing chops kind of figured out and developed as a rotational defensive tackle to start out his career. Obviously, you lose DJ Reader, his name almost escaped me for a moment there, but you lose him, and now you've got BJ Hill, Sheldon Rankins, Chris Jenkins, McKinley Jackson, who we'll talk about, Zach Carter. Like, you have a decent little rotation there, and Jenkins starting out as your third DT is probably great for his career. I would be a little bit lower on the move if he was starting right away, but as somebody you're probably just going to play on early downs, or to give Rankins and Hill a bit of a breather, because that's kind of what you're drafting Jenkins for, is long-term. You want him to take over for those guys because they're not getting any younger, right? They're both right around the age of 30, and we know once you hit that 30, or once a player hits 30 in the NFL, that's when you start to consider the future, start to consider who's going to take over for them long-term. And I think Chris Jenkins is a fantastic guy to get to sit behind them, develop a little bit, get some experience on early downs. And who knows, if his pass rushing tool belt and his ability as a pass rusher start to develop quickly, then maybe we see him on passing downs a little bit earlier in his career. But, you know, it's a lot of basically just learning how to pass rush again at Michigan. That really just wasn't his role. You know, The counters are a big issue with him. Leg drive is something you'd like to see him improve a little bit because he's got the build, the size, the length to have a really effective bull rush, and his bull rush is a little disappointing. So I would like to see them work on that specifically. But I think he can be, at worst, he's going to be a really good third defensive tackle. And taking that in the second round, can't go wrong. High upside, a low risk, high reward type of defensive tackle. You know, if 5 years down the line, he's just BJ Hill, which is absolutely within the realm of possibility, I think you're pretty happy with that pick. I would say I would be pretty happy with that pick as a Bengals, or if I was a Bengals fan. A fan of a different orange team, or a team with orange. I'm a Bears fan. If you didn't know, I have to mention that once a video because I hate that, you know, people want to come in and accuse me of being a homer. Like, I made a video about the Steelers the other day and complimented their draft, and someone came in and called me a homer. And it's like, no, I'm a fan of a team in the whole ass other conference. But I digress. The point here is I like that pick. And then Jermaine Burton in the third round is a really interesting pick because tape-wise, Jermaine Burton was one of the 10 to 15 best receivers in this class, like pretty easily. He has just about everything you want. He's a very fast, really fluid, good release package. He's a snappy, decisive route runner, really consistent hands. He had 0 drops in 2023 with only a 2.9% drop rate on his career. Physical at the catch point, pretty good body control, and he's really good at hauling in tough catches over the middle of the field. So we say that, and it's, why is he available in the third round? He's got all this going on for him. Well, first of all, he's not great after the catch, just because his contact balance isn't fantastic. He's not a great blocker, but we know Cincinnati doesn't care about blocking from their pass catchers, and that's okay. It's not a big deal. If you're a team that doesn't run the ball a whole lot, you're not going to care since he doesn't run the ball a whole lot. I get it. I'm not going to knock him too much for that with this fit. But the big concern is the off the field stuff. There is a video out there. I'm not going to show it in this video because I don't want to be responsible for spreading it. But there is a video out there of him striking a woman while she was storming the field. Now, I know storming the field is technically illegal. She didn't do anything. She was just running forward, and he happened to be in her path. He could have very easily sidestepped her. She could have very easily not seen him and just sidestepped him at the last second. There were plenty of ways this altercation could have ended up, but instead he decides to smack the living shit out of her. And, you know, I can't get behind that. You know, I don't think that's a controversial opinion or anything, but I can't get behind that. And on top of that, you hear coaches from Alabama and Georgia talk about him. He was on their shit list, especially at Georgia. So there are legitimate character red flags. Even if you don't want to say concerns because you don't know the kid, that's totally fine. I understand that opinion, absolutely. But there are red flags with character, which is why I had him rated so low. You can see I had a 4th to 5th round grade on him just because of how talented he was. You know, if he wasn't one of the 10 to 15 most talented receivers in this class, I wouldn't have called him a draftable player because I have a no nonsense or a no tolerance policy for that kind of shit, more specifically. But given that it's the Cincinnati Bengals and they have started to develop a pretty good culture. Now, I know they also had Joe Mixon on the roster, who also unfortunately struck a woman, but that was a little bit different. I'm not going to get into the politics of that. But the point is, they've dealt with people like this before, and they've had a decent track record with it. You look at the culture that Zach Taylor and the Bengals have been building in-house with guys like Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, even though I know he's a little upset with the team right now, Jermaine Pratt. There's a lot of really like high character guys in the building. So, you know, if they can get Jermaine Burton kind of, I don't want to say tamed because there's some weird undertones with that. But if they can just get him to chill the fuck out and do his job and not be an issue, then this can be your long-term T. Higgins replacement. He won't play the same. He won't play the same role. He's not a 50-50 ball deep threat, but he can be a legit number 2 opposite Jamar Chase. So like I said, this class, big risks. Burton is one of those for sure. There were some receivers I had rated higher than him on the board, but again, a lot of those guys probably weren't as talented as Burton. They just didn't have the extra baggage that Burton comes with. So we'll have to see if they can get that figured out. At the end of the day, it's a 3rd round pick. You're taking a swing on a really talented player. Reminds me a lot of Doug Baldwin as a player. So if they can get it figured out, by all means, if they can get him to change his ways, see the error of his ways, then this can end up being a really good pick. If not, I don't think anyone's going to blame you too harshly for taking a swing on such a talented ball player. It's not like he's been arrested or anything. So technically speaking, by NFL standards, he's innocent, right? Because we all know how the league handles that kind of stuff. But moving on, other third-round pick, they took McKinley Jackson, the defensive tackle out of Texas A&M. He was one of my favorite defensive linemen in this class. I had a good fourth-round grade on him. This is a tick earlier than I would have taken him, but still roughly where I would have taken him. And he reminds me a lot of Aleem McNeil from the Detroit Lions, who is one of the more underrated nose tackles in the game right now. But on top of being a good nose tackle, he's a pretty solid pass rusher. And that's kind of the thing with McKinley Jackson. He has the upside of a two-way nose tackle. Think Dexter Lawrence, but not quite Dexter Lawrence. Just that archetype of a true nose who's got the size and the strength and the stopping ability, but also has a little bit of pass rushing to his game. He's a good short area mover. He's a little shorter in terms of stature, but he's short and he's wide, so that helps a lot with gaining leverage and being able to two-gap. He's really strong, especially in his upper body. Super smart against the run. He's really quick to identify blocking concepts and just stand his ground and let the guys around him eat. He loves taking on double teams. He's very aggressive. He has the perfect demeanor for the position. And like I said, he has a deeper bag than you would expect from a nose tackle. He's got a nice long arm move. He's got a club move. He's got a push-pull move. There's a little bit of something there. It's not perfect, and it kind of comes in flashes, but there's something there. The thing is with McKinley Jackson, you need to get that consistency, right? There's some physical issues, like his speed isn't great because he's so big, and he's a little top-heavy, so his balance isn't perfect. You can find ways to help him kind of counteract that. But the big thing is just getting consistent play out of him. So he's another guy that I think is going to sit on the bench and develop a little bit. And he has the upside of a DJ Reader. Do I think he's going to hit that upside? We'll have to wait and see. I'm not going to say for sure, and I'm not going to doubt the guy. We'll have to wait and see. But there is a world where you found your long-term DJ Reader and BJ Hill replacements. I know DJ Reader's already gone, but I'm saying that type of tandem where you had a big hulking nose tackle who could also rush the passer a little bit and was just really dominant. And then your BJ Hill, who, Chris Jenkins could absolutely be better, but I think his floor, not even his floor, a couple steps above his floor is being a BJ Hill type of player. So I really like for day one, day two, what they did. Jury's kind of out on Burton for me, but, I thought the pick was good enough. Then you get to day three, and they go with the tight end out of Iowa, Eric All. This is an interesting one because looking purely based on tape, again, much like Jermaine Burton, he had the tape of one of the 3 to 5 best tight ends in this class, easily. That being said, it wasn't a great tight end class. I didn't love it, outside of Brock Bowers, obviously, and I really liked Ben Sinnott. Outside of those two, I didn't love this tight end class, but if Eric All wasn't dealing with the injury history he had, he could have been as high as tight end 3 for me. I think he's a really good player. However, that injury history is a real concern. He screwed up his ACL in 2023, tore his ACL in October. He had surgery on his spine before the 2023 season. So you've got a back injury and a knee injury you have to worry about, which are two of the worst injuries for this position. And on top of that, he didn't get to test because of those injuries. There's going to be some issues with him blocking on the move. Again, it's Cincinnati. They don't really care about their tight ends blocking. It's the bane of my existence as somebody who loves nothing more than watching guys block on the move. But, I am willing to accept that Cincinnati and I have different philosophies. So I understand not being super upset about that. And that being said, Eric All's a good inline blocker. It's just once he gets on the move, there's going to be times where he misses his mark. And then also, drops have been a bit of an issue. He has a 14% career drop rate, at least 4 drops in each of his last 3 full seasons. So that's tough. But that being said, on the positive side of things, he has the speed and the movement skills, that are really vindictive of a solid inline tight end. He's very capable in terms of size and strength for that inline tight end role. He's a pretty damn good route runner. He's really good at going up for tough catches. And like I said, as an inline blocker, there were some brilliant reps there. Not perfect, a little few and far between. And again, they're not few and far between, a little inconsistent, excuse me. And again, that's not the end of the world with Cincy. But I like the pick. You know, if he can stay healthy, this can be a good, like, think Drew Sample type of player. So we'll have to see what the plan is with him. And then you get to the 5th round and you take the corner out of TCU, Josh Newton. And this is another risky pick because his 2022 tape outclassed his 2023 tape. So he's someone you're banking on going back to how good he was a year ago. And that's possible. It's happened. But he's somebody that I just feel wishy-washy about this pick. Like, it's not a bad pick, but it's not a pick I'm in love with. He's got a ton of experience. He's a good press man corner at his peak. There's going to be times where he's actually going to play the ball pretty effectively. He's pretty decent against the run. But again, 2022, his tape is a lot better than his tape in 2023, where his back pedal is pretty rough. He lost a lot of ground against vertical threats. I'm reading off my notes here, so I apologize. Newton isn't somebody that I've talked about enough to have that kind of stuff memorized. And then, you know, he's just kind of inconsistent when it comes to playing the receiver against playing the ball. So it is what it is. Again, I don't think it's a bad pick. He definitely fits their profile of wanting more physical press man corners. I get that. He's a Lou Anarumo type of corner. So we'll have to see how that pans out. If he can get back to that 2023 or 2022 form, excuse me, this could be a pretty solid pick. If not, it's the 5th round. Nobody's going to fault you for it. And then you get to the 6th round and they take Tanner McLaughlin, the tight end out of Arizona. And I like this pick quite a bit. He is much more of a Cincinnati tight end, if that makes sense, in the sense that he is much more of a receiving threat from the tight end position. You know, they brought in Mike Gesicki on a 1-year deal, and you have Drew Sample in the room, obviously. So all is more in the Sample vein, and then McLaughlin's more in the Gesicki vein, right? He's a super smooth route runner, really fast. He's really good at using his height and his length for his catch radius. He uses that to his advantage pretty well. He's a big threat as both like someone running up a seam because of his speed, as well as being a threat over the middle because of his large frame. Great body control for his height. He's just a really good receiving tight end. He's a good rack threat, like he can make plays after the catch. But as a run blocker, there's a lot missing. Again, as I've already said, Cincinnati doesn't care. You know, if this is San Francisco or Miami or Baltimore or the Chargers or the Chicago Bears, for example, my Chicago Bears, this would be a pick that I'd hate because this is not a blocking tight end. This is not a guy you're going to ask to block. But in Cincinnati, where we know they do not care, it's a good pick. This is the exact type of tight end they like. I thought it was good value. I had a 3rd to a 4th round grade on him. You get him in the 6th round. I think that's a steal. I think that's an A+. I think that's a great pick. I'm a really big fan of that for them. But again, it's one of those picks where if it was another team, I wouldn't be a big fan of it. I don't love McLaughlin because I am very old school. I want my tight ends to block. But for Cincinnati, I get it. I absolutely do. And then also in the 6th round, they take Cedric Johnson, the defensive end out of Ole Miss. And he's just, you know, taking a swing on an athletic defensive lineman. That's fine value. That's fine process. Good length, good hand usage, good size, good frame. He's got good play strength. He's just an overall good athlete. Really good burst upfield. His first step's pretty nice. You just want to see him develop a bit more as a run defender. And there's a lot of missed tackles once he actually fires into the backfield, which can be an issue. But as what, like your 6th, 7th edge right now, I think you'll survive. I think you'll be okay. You're just, again, taking a swing on athletic traits, and I don't see that as a negative at all. And then the 7th round, Dijon Anthony, I believe is how you say his name. I'm not familiar with his tape. Obviously, I saw him a little bit when watching his teammate Cedric Johnson, but I can't say I studied him, anything like that. All I know is he projects as a pretty solid special teamer, plays physical. That's cool. You know, it's the 7th round. Taking a guy that can play special teams for you is definitely not a bad thing. You're just looking for somebody that can play. You're looking for somebody that can add some sort of value to your roster. So I can't complain there. And then their final pick, they take Matt Lee, the center out of Miami. And again, you're just looking for some type of value. I actually did watch Matt Lee. Wasn't a huge fan, but I did like him more than the 7th round. I thought he was worth a higher pick than this, so I think this is solid. He just doesn't have the size or the mass that you really want from an NFL center, but he's got pretty good technique. He's pretty quick. He's pretty smart. You just want him to bulk up a little bit, and who knows, if you can bulk him up, put him on a weight training program for the next year or two, maybe in 2-3 years you have a starting center here, because I think Lee has the technical, mental aspects of the game down in that regard, and we know that's kind of the hardest thing to do. Now, I wouldn't bet money on it because it is the 7th round. We'll have to see if the guy even makes the roster, but we'll have to see. That's the beauty of the NFL draft. So as a whole, I really like what Cincinnati did. Again, a lot of risks taken here, but I thought there were some good risks, a couple calculated risks. I really, really have a lot of faith in Mims, Jenkins, and Jackson in particular. Burton, we'll have to see with the off-the-field stuff. All, if he can stay healthy, can be a really solid tight end 2 for them long-term. Newton, if he can get back to that 2022 form, he can be a good depth corner for them. Very much fits that Lou Anarumo vibe, like I said. McLaughlin, I mean, he's kind of one of the safer picks they made. He's just a good athlete at tight end, and they love that kind of stuff. And then Johnson, if you can develop him, we'll have to see what happens there. Anthony, I can't really say, but if he's a special teamer, he's a special teamer. Matt Lee, you just got to get him to bulk up. So I'm going to give them an A- for this draft. I thought they did a very fine job. It wasn't the best draft in the world. It's kind of like I said about Baltimore, if you watch my Baltimore video. It wasn't the perfect draft. It wasn't the best draft in the world, but it was a damn solid draft. The only reason this isn't like an A is because of all the risks they took. If I was a little more confident that some of these guys were going to be able to play right away or didn't require a decent bit of development to hit what they need to hit, then this would be an A. Not enough steals for it to be like an A+. Only handed out 2 of those so far. So, that being said, they definitely did good. And I like what Cincinnati did. The future's bright. And if all pans out, you're going to see some legit starters from this draft class. It's just kind of a matter of if they can develop the guys that they ended up getting this year.
Had a chance on the throwback. This was an ill-advised throw. What an unbelievable catch by Cole Kmet. And he cups it too. No movement when he hits the ground, tucked up against his shoulder. Wow.
Using that